Hey guys, welcome back to another Flesh and Blood video. This video is proudly brought to you by the House of Cards, the official sponsor of my stream. Be sure to check out the link in the description below for all of your Flesh and Blood needs. Hey guys, as you know, it's RTN season right now. If you guys are playing at RTNs, I hope everybody's doing well and having fun. And if you're not winning or if you haven't qualified yet, remember, keep your head up. You never know when it's going to be your event. In my first road to nationals, I played Oldhim, and I actually ended up qualifying. I beat Akatsu in the top 8, and then in the top 4, I played against Alexi that I actually ended up beating, but it was past like 12 o'clock, and so I ended up conceding so that I could come home and sleep a little bit. It'd been a long day, and I was pretty tired. This Oldhim list that I'm playing has felt so tuned and so good. Like, honestly, this is probably the most tuned deck I've ever played. Like, just every single card has value in almost every single matchup, and this deck's just great. So I'm going to break that down for you guys today. I'm going to talk about my Oldhim deck and kind of how I board into different matchups and my thoughts and my plans and some things like that. So let's start at the top of the equipment. Let's work our way down. First up, we have Anothos. Anothos is great into the Guardian Mirror. Anothos and FaBrary of Determination are like, that's a combo right there. Like, those are great cards, and they play really well together. Anothos is very good because it gives you the option to attack for 6 when you pair it with FaBrary. Also stopping their Crown of Seeds damage that they might be floating. And on top of that, in the late game, when your opponent starts blocking with 2 cards and you have 2-card hand, like let's say you have a blue and a red, you pitch a blue to swing Anothos. If your opponent blocks with 1 card, you pitch your red card to activate FaBrary, and then you're attacking for 6. If your opponent blocks with 2 cards, you just arsenal your last card and you just pass. There's no reason to put your other card back into your deck. So you really have a really good tempo swing and like a good advantage play in the late game, which I really like. Crater Fist is a great card. I've been playing Crater Fist in, honestly, like a lot of matchups. Like, it's really good. The only time I'm not playing Crater Fist is when I have FaBrary in. FaBrary is the only time that I'm swapping that out. Crater Fist is really good into Lexi. It's really good into Viscerai. Like any aggro deck you want to play Crater Fist against, and you can also just randomly use it to push through some damage too. So there's that. Crown of Seeds is a staple. Always has been, always will be. Crown of Seeds is just really good. Lets you filter cards and allows you to keep cards in your deck. It also gives you a very good piece of information, which is hidden information. Like, having hidden information that your opponent cannot know about with Crown of Seeds is way more valuable than people are talking about. That's one of the best things about this card, in my opinion. Tunic, I mean, almost everything plays Tunic in some variety. Tunic Crown is insane. You can Tunic FaBrary, you can Tunic Rampart, you can Tunic Ironhide Legs. Like, Tunic is so good. It has a lot of value, and like, Tunic's just a great generic equipment. Ironhide Legs. So this is a decision point I want to talk about. A lot of people are playing Iron Rot Legs over Ironhide Legs. I feel like the way my deck is tuned and the way it's set up, that like 99% of the time, as long as I'm using Ironhide Legs appropriately and smart, when I don't have an Oasis Respite in my hand, or I'm not trying to, you know, use an extra resource for something, it's just better. It's 1 extra point, and I don't really feel like the resource hampers too many games. In fact, I would say that probably the Ironhide Legs is worse than Iron Rot Legs in 1 in 50 games. That's an odds I'm willing to take almost every time when I'm playing a competitive setting. Null Rune Boots is great. I really like Null Rune Boots against Dromai. It's very good against Viscerai. It's good against Briar. Anything that's presenting Arcane. It's also like, I bring that in against Icelander. Not that there's a ton of AB for Icelander here because it's not really a popular deck in the meta, but Null Rune Boots is a very good leg piece into a lot of aggro decks. Rampart of the Ram's Head. Rampart of the Ram's Head is probably one of my favorite cards in the deck, if you guys want the truth. Like, this card has been so good for me, and I've gotten so much value out of it. Rampart is really good into Lexi, Viscerai, Briar. Like, it's really good into Dromai. Like, Ram's Head is really good. Now, the one thing I will tell you, if you're playing against Alexi, you do have to play around Lightning Press and Rain Razors with Drill Shot. An early Drill Shot getting your Rampart will gain your Alexi opponent 12 to 15 points of value over the course of the game. So protecting Rampart is tough, and sometimes you kind of have to take some chances and be a little risky. Now, sometimes you don't have to be as risky because you just have defense reactions in your hand, so it's a little different. One of the decks that I would say honestly gives you the hardest time at trying to get a hold of Rampart is Azalea. Azalea does a really good job at dominating big drill shots for 7 or 10, and if you don't have a Staunch or a couple defense reactions, you're kind of stuck, you know, going up a creek. Like, it's pretty bad. So Rampart is very good, but you got to make sure you're protecting it. Titan's Fist is what you're using every time you're playing Rampart. I run Titan's Fist into everything except Oldhim. Like, literally, I run Titan's Fist into Bravo, too, because Rampart is so good. And I run Rampart and Titan's Fist into Bravo because Titan's Fist and Earth React allows us to cover up a Terra Asunder Anothos. So that's why I like that in that matchup. FaBrary of Determination is what we talked about earlier. This is very good into the Oldhim mirror, and that's really the only time I play it. If I'm going to play Anothos, I'm going to be playing FaBrary just because it pairs well into it. So now let's actually talk about the deck here and kind of break this down a little bit. So let's just start at the top. Command and Conquer. Command and Conquer is a great card. It's just really good. Like, there's a lot of value. It plays well with Pummel. If you have if your hand is, you know, blue card Command and Conquer and Pummel's in your arsenal, and you have Tunic up, like, it's 2-card 10 that also destroys Arsenal and makes them discard a card. It's really good. Command and Conquer is just a very valued card. It's also very good against the Rangers. You can shuffle it back into your deck with the codexes that they play, so that's something to be aware of. Command and Conquer has a lot of value. Endless Winter. Let's talk about Endless Winter for a minute. This is probably one of my favorite cards in Oldhim. This is a 4 for 8 that makes frostbites or taxes your opponent's turn in a lot of ways. So the best way to play this is if you have Tunic up, blue card, and then an ice card in hand so that you can throw 8 Fuse. Now, throwing this card is also worth not having the Fuse, but this card is very good and plays well with Tunic. Endless Winter is one of those cards that I'm honestly kind of sad that I won't be able to play now that Oldhim's going to rotate out. But Endless Winter is a great card. Foreseen. It's a 0 for 4 that ops 1 lets us churn through our deck. Like, it's just, this is an extremely efficient card is why we play it, and it's just, like, it's really good. Oasis Respite is another card. This card can be countered by certain Ranger cards like Murkmire Grapnel and things like that. But Oasis Respite's a great card. It also plays around Dreadbore's defense reactions can't be played text. So Oasis Respite has a lot of value and is very good. I really like this card a lot, and it also gives you some play into the Wizard matchups. Let's talk about Pulverize. Pulverize is a great card. Like, Pulverize is 10 for 14, but it's really 10 for 18. This is one of those cards that I'm always hesitant to heave, because if you heave it, it's face up, which means you can't Crown of Seeds it away. So there is a little bit of concern there with what you're looking at versus what you're actually going to be doing. Pulverize is just, there's so much value there. Like, throwing Pulverize, almost every time I've thrown a Pulverize, I've won the game. Like, that's how good Pulverize is. And it's great into a ton of decks. The only thing that I would tell you to say, like, I would play into this less against Ninja, especially ninjas that are playing Kodachis. If they're playing Kodachis, their first Kodachi's for 0, and that's all you did right there with your Pulverize. So, but Pulverize is a great card. I run 2 because it's really good into Bravo. It's really good into the Oldhim mirror. It's also very good into Lexi. If you set up a second cycle Pulverize and they take a turn off, it's a blowout. It's actually insanely good, and there's so much value that comes from that. So Pulverize is really good. Most of the time what ends up happening is you have 3 blues Tunic counter and you just, like, play your Pulverize second cycle. That's most of the time how I've ended up playing my Pulverizes. Pummel. This is a card I wish I could play more than one of. I can't figure out how to fit this into the deck, if you want the truth. I can't figure out how to fit more in. The one of is really good. I do have to say there are certain times that I'm playing against my teammates and they know I'm only playing a one of, so they don't play around the Pummel as often as I feel like sometimes they should. But they do play around it more when they're playing against random Oldhims, which I respect. They just know my list and they know they don't have to play around it as much. Arsenaling the Pummel and then crowning it away so that your opponent does not know where it's at in your deck is so much value. There is so much value with arsenaling your Pummel and not letting your opponent know where it is. Like that, again, this is where you're seeing the value of Crown of Seeds really being popped up again. Sigil of Solace. Sigil of Solace is great. This card's awesome. It being an instant basically means you can never get caught with, you can't get caught red-handed or anything. Like, there's nothing bad like that. The card doesn't block as most instants do. Honestly, arsenaling Sigil of Solace is a very cool line, because if you go to Arsenal the Sigil of Solace and they throw a Command and Conquer, you can just block 6 and then play the Sigil of Solace from your hand, like from Arsenal. There's no worry about getting blown out by Pummel. There's no anything like that. Sigil of Solace is also very good if you go first. If you're playing against like a deck that you're going to try and fatigue and you have a Sigil of Solace on turn 0, you're automatically ahead. There's so much value in having a Sigil of Solace on turn 0. A 0 for like a 0 card instant, a 0 resource instant that gains 3 is insanely good. And you can also arsenal this card and just crown it away and play it later. Like, there's a lot of value in this card, and I really like Sigil of Solace. Sink Below. Sink Below is the best 0 for 4 defense reaction that you can play. Being able to filter cards is so important. Like, this is an automatic 3 of. There are a lot of decks that play breakpoint cards, or come in for 7 or come in for 4, and so Sink Below just really helps you cover up those awkward numbers, just like Foreseen does. Spinal Crush. Spinal Crush is a staple of any Guardian deck. Spinal Crush is awesome because it turns off Go Again. Now, there are some matchups where Spinal Crush isn't as important as it is in other decks, like Spinal Crush against, Rhinar, or Spinal Crush against Bravo or Oldhim isn't as important. It's just a 5 for 9 pretty much that way. So it is important to know where Spinal Crush shines and where it doesn't. Spinal Crush Pummel is also a really sweet line you can take. If your hand is blue, like if it's 2 blues, some card that blocks 3, and then a Pummel, and you have a Spinal Crush and Arsenal, and your Tunic is up, you can block with the card from, like, the 3 block from your hand, the random 3 block that we haven't assigned, and then you get to pitch your 2 blues, play Spinal Crush from your Arsenal. You have 1 floating, you have Tunic up, and you have a Pummel in your hand. There are a lot of cool things like that you can do. Tunic really allows Oldhim to have a lot of cool play lines that allows us to pummel Command and Conquer and Spinal Crush, where decks like Bravo, where a deck like Bravo would need extra cards to do so. So it is kind of neat, and Spinal Crush is really good. Spinal Crush is good, but not great into Lexi, in my opinion. Like, it is a very valuable play, but Lexi normally just blocks 6 and then has like a 3 or 4 card hand anyway, depending on how many cards are in their arsenal. Spinal Crush Pummel is a blowout play that you're really looking for there. Red Staunch Response. When I started out playing Oldhim, I was playing 3 red Staunches. I think 2 is perfect. 2 gives me so much value into Lexi, because there are some times when Lexi has a Lightning Press and a Rain Razors and their arrows coming in for like 10, or some Lexis are playing Spike with Blood Rot, like things like that. So the 0 for 3 pump with Blood Rot, I can't remember what's called off the top of my head. I don't think it's Spike, but either way. And Staunch will let you cover up those 7 to 10 cards, those 7 to 10 power attacks for 1 card. And there's a lot of value in that. So 2 Staunches is honestly perfect. I wouldn't play more, I wouldn't play less. I feel like they're necessary. I do leave my Staunches in against Lexi. When we first started testing against Lexi, I was taking out my Staunch Responses, but I do leave them in against Lexi. I take them out against Fi, I take them out against Katsu, and there are some other decks that I take them out against, but the one big one that I really like to talk about is Lexi, because Staunch is very important into Lexi, and it can really save you in a lot of weird spots. And obviously you want Staunch into Bravo and Oldhim. It's kind of a given, but just to cover that, just to make sure. Remembrance. This is a card that I think should personally be banned, because I think it's bad for the game. But with that opinion aside, Remembrance is a one-of in this deck because it's really good into the Guardian Mirror, and it's also needed sometimes to not let yourself get fatigued. So it's very important against Dromai. You have to run the Remembrance against Dromai, because you need it to be able to shuffle 3 poppers back into your deck so that you can kill them at the end of the game and keep tempo and still win. Now, this card can make your hands very awkward. It's not a blue or a red. Yellow doesn't really help you a ton in your deck. A lot of times you want to arsenal your Remembrance and crown it away. One of the problems you'll run into is that your hands don't always allow that. So you got to be careful with the Remembrance, and you got to pay attention. Sometimes you can have an awkward hand where you have like Remembrance, Heart of Fyendal, Sigil of Solace. That hand doesn't play, and that's just really awkward. It doesn't block. It doesn't really do anything. So playing Remembrance is a little bit risky in my opinion. That's why I'm only playing 1, but I think it's a necessary evil. I honestly, genuinely hope they ban this card. Blue Autumn's Touch. If you've been playing Flesh and Blood long enough, you can remember a time when Autumn's Touch was suspended thanks to Starvo. What a crazy sentence to say that is. Autumn's Touch is really cool. Blue Autumn's Touch deals with Dominia. It deals with, what's the other, the dragon that kills Crown of Seas. I can't remember what's called off the top of my head, but it kills the 2 big dragons in Dromai. It's also an Earth React, which is really good. It turns on Hammer. It turns on both the hammers if you need it to. Like, Autumn's Touch is a great card. Late game, if you have 2 Autumn's Touch in your hand, it's also a 3-block. Like, Autumn's Touch is a great card, and honestly, like, one of the undervalued cards in Oldhim, in my opinion. This is the only Earth card I'm playing. I do like to keep as many Autumn's Touches in my deck as I can going into second cycle, because Earth React is a very valuable thing to have. I also like to try and pitch stack it with Mulch, because if my opponent ever takes a turn off where I have blue Tunic up and then I can throw Mulch fused with Autumn's Touch, it's like a create your own Command and Conquer. So it's pretty cool. But Autumn's Touch is a great card. It is the only Earth card I play. I don't think any more is necessary. 3 Earth cards is about perfect considering all the 0-for-4s that we're playing in our deck. Brothers in Arms. This is a card I was very skeptical of at first. I didn't really like this card when I played it in Iyslander. I think I have since become a better Flesh and Blood player, and I've learned the value of this card. If you crown away a card and you have 2 resources floating, more than likely you're going to pitch a blue, so you'll have 2 resources floating. You can Rampart and Brothers in Arms and block for 5. You just crowned away a card, which means you have 4 cards in your hand, and then after you Brothers in Arms and Rampart, you've now blocked for 5, and you still have 3 cards in your hand and a crown floating. Brothers in Arms is very good at covering up breakpoints. I kind of look at this like a weird Sink Below and a weird Fate Foreseen. I really like this card, and I like Brothers in Arms is a great card, and it pairs really well. Excuse me. It just pairs really well with the deck and the idea of it. I did test 3 Brothers in Arms for a while, just to see how I could make it work. We tried not playing a Remembrance and playing the 3rd Brothers in Arms. 2 is perfect. 1's not enough. We also tested 1 for anybody who's curious. 1 is not enough. The only thing I don't like about Brothers in Arms is that it does not turn on Hammer. So every card has a downfall normally in some fashion. Brothers in Arms doesn't turn on Hammer to attack for 4. So, but Brothers in Arms is a great card. And honestly, if you're playing against Rangers or Assassins and they play Codex of Frailty, or, you know, if they play Codex of Frailty, I will a lot of times get a Brothers in Arms back into my deck. If I've played both of them, I'll go get a Brothers in Arms, and then I'll crown it and shuffle it back into my deck. And that way I have another 4-block coming around. I want as many 4-blocks against Ranger as I can have, especially against Lexi. So that is something to keep in mind, and a pretty neat trick that I picked up along the way. Buckling Blow. Buckling Blow's crush text isn't super relevant in my opinion. This card's a 4-for-6. So if you're playing against Dromai, you want to keep all the 4-for-6s you can in your deck. Buckling Blow, Chokeslam, Command and Conquer is not a 4-for-6, it's a 2-for-6. And Endless Winter is a 4-for-8. You want those in your deck because those 4 cards I just named, Command and Conquer, Endless Winter, Buckling Blow, Blue Chokeslam, those are cards you want in your deck because all 4 of those cards deal with Uvia for 1 card. You pitch a card, use Tunic, and you get to kill Uvia. There is so much value in that line of text. Like in that play pattern line. People do not realize that, and it's something that I will shuffle in Buckling Blows and Chokeslams over like Pulverizes against Dromai because they're very relevant and they kill certain things. And also late game when you're winning and like you're trying to push tempo, just swing 6 at them. If they're at 5 or less and you're throwing 6, you're getting a card, maybe 2. So it's very like this is Buckling Blow, like it's not an all-star, but it does stand out in Dromai, and also it costs 4, so it turns on Anothos, and it turns on Titan's Fist. It's relevant that turns those cards on. Okay, Channel Lake Frigid. So Channel Lake Frigid, I mean, it's an all-star. It's obviously better in Iyslander than it is in Oldhim. Like, being able to play this card at instant speed in Iyslander is a blowout, but very, 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 very rarely do I actually play this card. From my, do I play it from my hand or from my arsenal and put it onto the field? Now, it does happen. It's very good against Ninja. I did have a game, my top 8 game, I actually got to put a Channel Lake Frigid into play against a Katsu on turn 0, which is very cool and very relevant because Channel Lake Frigid and Winter's Grasp are the only 2 ice cards that I play, so there's not a ton of times when you actually get to play it. I do like the 2 sets of ice cards for Ice React. A lot of times I will use Channel Lake Frigid as an Ice React against certain decks, or if not, it's just a 3-block. So you kind of have to know when to take your chances with Channel Lake Frigid and when to block with it. I I do try to shuffle some number of ice cards into my deck second cycle, because having them in my deck second cycle means I can dominate my Glacial Footsteps, and it also means I can fuse my Endless Winners. So you don't want to block with all of them first cycle, because you'll be out of ice cards, and then your Glacial Footsteps and your Endless Winners won't be able to be fused. So it is something to think about there. Next card's Blue Chokeslam. Again, the Crush effect comes up very rarely. This is the 3 block that turns on Anothos, and it also plays into killing Uvia, just like I talked about a moment ago. Chokeslam is just it's a good blue card, and I really like this card. Turns on Anothos, turns on Titan's Fist. Just another good generic Guardian card. I say generic Guardian card because I feel like there's a list of Guardian cards that kind of just fit into every Guardian deck. So, Cranial Crush. This card is a 6 for 8. Like, straight up. This card doesn't really have any text besides 6 for 8, in my opinion. There is the occasional time when someone will play an Art of War or something like that, and this does come up. But Blue Cranial Crush is a good card. It's a 6 for 8 late game. It blocks 3. It's a popper against Dromai, and it also turns on Anothos and Titan's Fist. So this fits into that generic Guardian card slot that I was talking about. Debilitate. Here is another 4 for 6 that you should try to keep into your deck against Dromai that can also be used to kill Uvia and Dominia and other things like that. Debilitate actually has a cool effect. It says if this crushes, your opponent's first attack during their turn has -2. If you're playing against Alexi and you throw this at them, they will more than likely take 6 and just take the -2, which means you threw a 4 for 8. That's better than a 4 for 6. This is a card that has some value and does randomly come up with the Crush effect. Not super regularly, because a lot of times people just have to throw one card in front of it. But it does come up from time to time. This card serves as a 3-block. It also serves as turning on Anothos and turning on Titan's Fist. This fits into that generic Guardian slot as well. Disable. Disable is like another like weird Command and Conquer effect that you're trying to like get value out of over the course of the game. It's a 3-block. It turns on Titan's Fist and it turns on Anothos. This does attack for 7, and the thing that I like about that is that it means one card won't cover it up unless it's a defense reaction. Like a 3-block won't cover this up. And if your opponent has one card in Arsenal that they really like and they don't want it to go to the bottom of their deck, this can be a good tempo play. This also plays really well with the pitch 2 blues, play Disable, have a Pummel in your arsenal, and then you have Tunic and 1 resource floating. So there's always some play there with these 5-costers that I really like. 11, put your arsenal card on the bottom of your deck and discard a card is not a bad line of play at all. Glacial Footsteps. 8 times out of 10, this is a 6 for 8 with no fuse. It's a good popper against Dromai. It's just a solid 6 for 8. I like these 6 for 8s in the Oldhim Mirror because it allows you to just, like, if they take an off turn, it just allows you to throw 8 and then arsenal a card. Glacial Footsteps is a good card. It's also really good at closing out games with its Dominate effect being fused via Channel Lake Frigid or Winter's Grasp late game. So normally if I'm playing the Guardian Mirror or if I'm playing at something where I have tempo and I'm going to want to close the game out, I try to pitch stack a Glacial Footsteps and a Channel Lake or a Winter's Grasp together just so I can try to fuse that together. So something to think about, but it's a good card in multiple matchups and it never comes out of the deck. Heart of Fyendal. Heart of Fyendal is one of those cards that I play because I think that the 1% matters. So we're going to have a side tangent here for a second. Flesh and Blood has come a long way in the last 3 or 4 years or however long the game's been out. When I started playing, people were like not blocking and taking 15 damage and only attacking for 8 because they didn't really understand the game, and that math was the key to this game. Over time, that has changed. People have gotten fundamentally better at the game. People understand pitch stacking better, and people understand what's like how to block and when to block and what's relevant. Heart of Fyendal is one of those cards that gives you a 1% into a lot of matchups. You will see this card if you're playing my list and you're playing it how I play it. You will see this card 2 to 3 times a game. Some games you may never gain a life off of it because that's how Oldhim plays. There are some games, there has been games that this has kept me alive. Those are the 1%ers. And when I say 1%, if anything, I am shooting too high with that number. Heart of Fyendal is not a necessary card for this Oldhim deck. If you do not own a Heart of Fyendal and you want to play this Oldhim deck and you have most of the other cards, skip the Heart of Fyendal. You don't have to have it, but I play it because I'm a very competitive person, and I like that 1% into a lot of matchups. So definitely keep that in mind. Next, we have Macho Grande. This card's a good popper. This card has built-in Dominate, which I really like. Pitch stacking this card into pitch 2 blues, use Tunic to attack for 8 Dominate in the Guardian Mirror, or when you're trying to close a game out, is very relevant. I do like that card. Like, this card is just great, and it has a lot of function. It's a popper, and it has Dominate late game against Guardians. Besides that, it fits into the generic Guardian slot where we block for 3, and it turns on both of our hammers. So, Mulch is a sweet card. This is one of those cards that I really wanted to take a minute to talk about. The times that you get to fuse Mulch and actually attack with it and like have a Command and Conquer effect doesn't come up often. I would say once every, I don't know, like probably once in 10 games if I had to guess. But it does come up every now and again, and you can make it happen. You can force this, but this is a 4-for-6 Command and Conquer basically, but that defense reactions can be played against it. So I like to keep them in my deck in case I do ever get the opportunity to turn it into a Command and Conquer. But at the same time, this is a block 3 generic Guardian card that turns on both of our hammers, and it also serves as a popper. So this is another 4-for-6 against Dromai. You want to try to keep into your deck that you can throw at Uvia or Dominia or the other big 5-cost dragon that I could not think of the name of to save my life for some reason. This card's really good though. Like, it's a great fit into the deck. I was not playing this at first. I took this from Michael Fang's list when I started grinding Oldhim, and it was a good addition. I really like it. All right, next we're gonna look at Rouse the Ancients. Rouse the Ancients is I have a love-hate relationship with this card, if I'm being honest. This card's great in the Guardian Mirror. It's very good into Dromai. It allows you to put pressure on or kill big dragons. I really I could. There's not a single world where I could cut Rouse the Ancients ever. Rouse the Ancients is a great card. It turns on both the hammers. It only blocks for 2, and it's a card that requires you to keep multiple cards in your hand. That's tough. That's a tough sell. This card gets pitched a lot for Crown of Seeds and for Rampart and for defense reactions, but it is a good card, and I like to keep it in. Generally, what I like to do is I like to pitch stack this card in my first or second hands if it becomes available to me to play this card, because it's a very good take tempo card at the start of my second cycle. A lot of decks are still playing out the end of their first cycle, so being able to have a go again turn into like a hammer or into, I don't know, a Command and Conquer or a Spinal Crush, like there are a lot of options you can have with Rouse the Ancients here. And just being able to play, like have a go again turn right before they're getting ready to prepare for their second cycle. So I just talked about how people are still at the end of their first cycle when you're getting into your second cycle. Normally, and I say normally, this is my experience most games, you're getting into your second cycle as Oldhim about 2 turns before they get to their first cycle. Generally, somewhere in that ballpark. If you take tempo right before they get to their first pitch stack hand, it's insane. And honestly, a lot of the Lexi players, the Azalea players, the Phi players, like a lot of these decks, if they know what's coming, they'll take a turn off and set up. And that's when you strike with the Rouse the Ancients. It's very important. Now, it is worth noting that Rouse the Ancients into Spinal Crush or, you know, Command and Conquer is only relevant if they're like at 15 or less. If your opponent's at 30 and you're going to throw Rouse the Ancients, it just says 7 damage. Your opponent has no reason to block that. They should just take that. Now, that is not always the case, and sometimes you will scare people, but just something to think about there. Asunder. If you are a Ranger player and I'm able to keep this in my deck going in a second cycle, you should be terrified. Honestly, I say that. Like, I play Rampart and Titan's Fist into both the Ranger matchups. Asunder's a house. I do my absolute best to keep this card in my deck at all costs in second cycle, because a lot of these decks, they don't have the blocking capability to stop at late game. They've used their equipment. They don't want to give me New Horizons. They don't want to give me like whatever they're using. Asunder Hammer will give you so much tempo late game. And when they take a big turn off the setup, when there's only like 2 or 3 hands left in their deck, well, there's only about 8 to 12 cards left in their deck. Excuse me. If you play Asunder Hammer and then you can keep up pressure after that, the game's over. You can't lose. Now, you have to get to that point. That is something to remember. But it's tough to lose, but Terra Asunder Hammer will give you a lot of value, and it's really good card. Thunderquake. This fits into that generic Guardian slot that I was talking about. Turns on both our hammers, it blocks for 3. Now, it does attack for 8, and you can heave this card to only throw it for 3 resources, which is kind of cool. But this card's a 6 for 8 most of the time. Again, it's a popper. It's very good in the mirror. It's a blue. It turns on our hammers, blocks for 3. It checks all the boxes we needed to check here. Winter's Grasp. This is my second ice card that I play. I really like this card. It's a blue. It blocks 3. It allows us to ice react. It allows us to ice fuse. This is a card that we can keep to kill Dominia with if we ever need it to. There is no like on hit effect. It's just a 2 for 4. So it doesn't turn on hammer. I do end up using this as ice react or blocking pretty early in the game most of the time. There is, again, the occasional time where I have this card and I can, you know, pitch it to put a Channel Lake into play, but that does not come up very regularly. So guys, this was my Oldhim deck. I love this deck. I wouldn't change anything about it. It's great. If there's a lot of Icelander or a lot of Kano in your meta, you probably want to change the equipment slots here and make it a little bit different just because of the value that you get from having AB. Notable cards that I'm not playing that I think you could fit into, you know, an Oldhim deck if you wanted to. Zealous Belting. Zealous Belting is great into Dromai. It's good into the Guardian Mirror. Like, it has a lot of really good play. Another card is E-Strike. Again, good into Dromai, good into the Guardian Mirror. It has, again, a lot of good play. Fitting 2 more Pummels into the deck would be a lot more fun, but I don't know how, if you want the truth. With my list, I don't think it's, like, a possibility to make that happen. So, definitely something to think about. But this list has been very good to me. If you guys are looking to play Oldhim at, you know, this weekend's RTNs or next weekend RTNs, then I would suggest this very good. I would suggest this list to anybody. 45 blues in the list, which is a lot more than most people are playing, but I built the deck to have consistency. And the way I put this list together is I took Matt Rogers' list, and then I looked at Michael Fang's list, and I just started taking out cards and putting in cards that I liked or I didn't like here and there randomly. A lot of these cards are very similar to Matt Rogers' list. A lot of my list ideas came from Matt Rogers. Matt Rogers' list from the Calling in Baltimore had a huge impact on what I was playing. So if you're looking for any inspiration, you can also look to his list and know that a lot of my ideas came from there. So, but yeah, guys, this was my Oldhim list. I love it. It helped me qualify for nationals. I'm probably going to play it again this weekend. Honestly, we're playing an RTN tomorrow in Kentucky, so I'm probably going to be playing it again tomorrow. But we'll see. I might play Dash or Icelander or something for fun just to kind of hang out. But if you guys got any questions or comments, hit me up in the comments below. I'd love to hear it. If you guys think there are any cards that are missing, also let me know. If you liked the video, be sure to like and subscribe for more content. I'll see you guys next time. Take it easy, guys.